This video, we interviewed Jet and Amuna from the Blueberry TV community Discord. We talked about weaving together storylines in roleplay and about the lore on different Minecraft servers. We really hope you enjoy this video as it helps us with our study on unconventional storytelling and its impact on society. So hello Amuna, hello Jet, thank you for joining us today. We all know each other from Blueberry's server and from Discord. Can you guys introduce yourselves?
Okay. Amuna's looking at me immediately. Hello, I'm Jet Dawnbringer. I am a moderator of Blueberry's server. I am a longtime DM and even longer time storyteller. I run a personal server with these guys that does have lore on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am Imuna. But yeah, I am on the Blueberry Java server. I am a lore keeper, which means I help people with characters, lore, story, and I often collaborate with Jet and Rion and a bunch of other people to create a cohesive plotline. And people have claimed I'm a main character on the server. I don't want to be, but here we are.
She's also a writer.
Yeah. Yeah, I am a writer. I'm also a creative writing teacher.
Amazing. Let's grab some boats and fishing poles and go down into the lake. The first question I wanted to ask you guys, you guys already have your fishing poles.
We had to call them really early, especially the boats. I have the manger boat.
Take a chance.
And nobody else gets to have it.
Do you have a boat?
No hitting.
So I'm really interested. Amuna, you're a creative writer. You teach creative writing.
Mm-hmm.
And Jet, you're a DM. How did you get started in storytelling and wanting to tell stories?
I've always been sort of a creative type. I have a very active imagination, and I wasn't always the best at communicating my thoughts and feelings, and wasn't very popular with other kids, so I sort of like escaped into books and writing. And at first I wanted to be a paleontologist because I love dinosaurs, and then I realized I'm not good at science, so I decided to try being an author.
Oh.
And I don't know, it's been sort of like an ever-growing experience with my passion for storytelling. It's evolved from novels to D&D and other role-playing, things like that. I found the Blueberry server, I think it's been almost 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Jet was one of the first people who I met, and the first question she asked me is, "Hey, I see you are into storytelling. Do you want to join the Winter Court?" And
the what?
And then she didn't.
Yeah.
I'm a longtime practitioner of storytelling in the campfire sense, in that there is something so deeply human about sitting by a fire and telling stories, and also mayhaps waving a burning branch around while doing it. Oh,
yes.
Another little pad. One of the things that I did when I was younger was be like, well, let me tell you a story. I've always had very vivid dreams, and a lot of times I'm able to bounce off of that in a way that's very interesting. But I got into D&D when my dad came into my class in 5th grade while we were learning the Jabberwocky story.
Yep,
Oh,
classic.
And said, well, in D&D 4E, a vorpal sword is one that can cut off your foe's head in one strike.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my first experiences with D&D was a online Discord for tabletop champions. They still do a podcast. They've done D&D for a really long time. I joined their server because I was a fan of theirs. I was very active. They started a Wikipedia for a new season of theirs where their fans could write entries for a region of the map. And then their DM, Sean, was like, do you want to play in the game? We're making a server where a bunch of people can come in and RP in those places, in that physical area that you've created. And I said yes, because of course I said yes. And it was it's been quite honestly one of the most formative writing experiences for me ever, just because there's something about working in conjunction with a bunch of other people with stories that are not your own, and kind of the effort that it takes to tell a story that's interesting for other people to find out about you, you know, because often when you DM your own storyline in a group with other people, you have to make it applicable to them. They have to be able to interact with it in a way that's interesting, or else it loses all of its appeal and you can't tell your story. So that's why in my server we have the lore masters. We have a group of people who are there to help make sure that everything stays internally cohesive, that your story is not cutting off somebody else's story progression, that when you start telling a story, we can help you figure out ways to tie it in with other people's storylines. Because otherwise, again, if you're telling a story just on your own, that's monologue.
It's true. Like when you're creating a narrative story, it's you writing and it's kind of just like a monologue. But when you create a story that involves other people, you give up that control and you involve a bunch of other creatives, which do have its pros and cons, right? What do you think are some of those pros and cons about having a story that involves so many other people and so many other perspectives?
I think that opening yourself up to RP is incredibly vulnerable. And it's often extremely difficult to give up that control, to trust that somebody else, if they're writing something around your character, will give your character thought, will give them, you know, consideration, will take them in the direction that you want to take them. And I know this because when you're new to RP and new to writing, your ability to work with other people in regards to telling a story it's a little limited, because the story that you're telling is you have a pretty strong idea of what it is, and so you don't want other people to mess it up. I think that being willing to let other people change your story takes vulnerability. It takes really knowing what your character is, what your motivations are, and the overarching kind of story that you want to tell as a person and as your character, to allow you to have the confidence to play with other people in a way that is fair to their story.
Yeah, I think that's very right, actually. I think the most problems I've had usually do lore in servers with other people and everything is going to be just what the other people have in mind for their own story, and like everything that you may think for yourself too. It just comes and it collides, and when you're the sole writer of a book, obviously everything is gonna just turn out the way you want. But that's also kind of what's fun about it. Like everything could change, and it would make much more sense if other people, actual people, are involved and just doing their own thing and being your NPCs that are actually not NPCs anymore. But yeah, that's what's cool about it.
I think if you wanted to tell a single story, that's kind of what people do when they play single player. It's like, do you mind if I name drop other YouTubers?
No, go ahead.
Who are not Dream SMP? It's like what Flip is doing.
Yeah.
In his hardcore world, where he's trying to tell a story through building. And I think that's something that a lot of people do when they do hardcore worlds, is, you know, because it's kind of a once in a lifetime experience. You'll never be able to go back if you die. It gives you that kind of feeling of like, right now we tell this story. I think role-playing and doing improv kind of evokes that same feeling, right? Where regardless of if we go back, I'll never say the same things again, because to be honest, I do not remember what I said.
Yeah, the curse of improv.
Yeah, right. So every time, Rion, did you just steal my? Okay, thank you. It's right. So, and that's a genuine fear, that because you're doing it for, you know, this one time, you'll get it wrong, which I don't think is. I think again, it's such a vulnerable point, and it takes so much confidence to be like, there's no way to get this wrong. There's no way for this to be wrong. This is my character. I know who it is, and regardless of how I respond to a situation, that'll be correct.
Yeah, I think the pro with improv for sure is having a bit more fluidity, because usually with our IRP, I'm sort of a mix between planning and improv. Rion's taught me the joys of doing a lot more improv, because I noticed that I've noticed here lately, if I have more planned RPs, I'm a bit more constrained, and if people are a lot more rigid with their plans, it's difficult for my character to respond in a way that is more natural. I've RP'd with people in the past who would not compromise or would not try to see different points of view and just wanted their story to just be whatever they wanted, even if it meant other people couldn't fully interact, and it was very difficult, which I understand, people, their characters and their story. When it comes to RP and like multiplayer stories and plot lines, it's sort of like an almost unspoken agreement of acknowledging other people's characters and stories and being willing to work within them and even, think outside the box on some things. Because whenever I try to write on my own, it feels more difficult, but that's why I'm thankful for Jet and Rion and other people on the server, because I'll go to them with problems with the character or the story, and we have brainstorming sessions, and we'll gripe and we'll freak out about stuff. And by the end of it, it's true. By the end of it, the story is a lot better, and there's a lot of things that have been talked out or just made stronger. Where on my own, it would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been, I feel like, as good.
I find it personally difficult to call myself a writer because of that. I prefer DM, I prefer storyteller, because I've never really been able to tell a story or write down a story without bouncing it off of somebody first. My style of storytelling relies so much on input from other people, whether that's just approval or whether that's, oh, that sounds so cool. It's like the tavern style storytelling or bar style storytelling, where you go with your buddies to a bar and then talk about, zombie apocalypse things really loudly. That might just be me and my family, but I feel like everyone should have this experience of going to a restaurant somewhere with people who you like and just creating a story over like a meal, and then when it's done, you're done. And then you'll forget it, but it's, we've had some really interesting stories come out of like a 1 hour
in the moment you're so invested.
Yeah, just because something is temporary doesn't mean that it's not good or that it is not meaningful.
Aw, wow, wise words from Jet.
Yeah, there's been moments during RP or improv where it's just a quick little thing, but behind the screen I'm like freaking out or shaking or just telling myself, oh, that was so cute, or oh god, they're not actually mad at you, it's all okay, sort of thing. And it's just a throwaway line to them, but to the person, even to the character, it can be very impactful. I noticed RP with Rion especially, they've introduced me to what I like to call fluff, and and I actually started to feel more emotions for my character and started to be more like, oh, I don't actually want you to be upset or sad. I actually care about you more so than if I was just my usual writer self and just like, this would be fun to make the audience cry, or oh, okay, this fits for the story, and I'm just going to detach from the character, sort of thing.
So when you're role playing, you have more of a connection with the character yourself than what you're deciding the audience might like.
Because when you RP, I feel like it's for other people, but it's also at the same time for yourself in a way too. And when you write, say like a novel, you still write for yourself in a way, but you have to think more of the audience or the trends, or if something is exactly correct, or dates or whatever. And with RP, I feel like there's a little bit more freedom in just being a bit more selfish, I suppose, but in a good way.
I mean, if you're not invested in your character, nobody else is going to be invested in your character. You have to love them. You have to know them.
Yeah.
Nobody else is going to close read your RP unless you want to do it yourself.
I don't know about that, because there is a thing that I think happens when you RP that is very different from when you are writing a story. It is impersonation.
Mhm.
When you're RPing, you need to go through the emotions that your character has to feel. You have set this personality of them, and you have set those boundaries, those histories, those traumas or good times and everything, and you have to keep them as a baggage and think of them when anything new is happening to them. And because you're going through those emotions that technically aren't yours, like you're not your character,
Yeah.
you haven't lived what they lived, you haven't felt what they felt, it's all new, and yet you impersonate them as if it was something you felt with empathy to kind of make them change and advance in their character arc, which I don't think you do just as much. I don't think you do just as much when you just write something.
Yeah, I think basically RP is kind of that wonderful middle ground between writing and acting, where you both act and write your own script, basically. Well, write your own script, which is in quotation marks, because it's as you go along. But because I feel like a lot of what Rion was describing is I mean, kind of the process of acting. One of the easier things that acting does in regards to getting ready for RP is giving you like a script to follow to teach you kind of how to embody like certain emotions at a certain time. The experience of acting for me was figuring out who your character was to the point where you would have the same thoughts every night. To follow the script, like everything you're saying should make logical sense for your character to say because you are thinking this thing. And then for every performance, you think the same thing, and as such, the words come naturally. You know, and RP is kind of that feeling, but without the words being given to you, which can be both freeing and also the freedom can be overwhelming. I know I myself tend to not have extremely set out characters initially because it never works out really well in the first couple of sessions to have like an extremely defined character. Background, sure. Background I feel is different than character traits. And I'd rather figure out what my interactions with the people around me are going to be like before defining what my character traits are. Because sometimes, like, the way you interact with your background or your history changes depending on if you're close to somebody. And I really like having secrets that I reveal like after a lot of sessions that everyone's like, well, okay, duh. Or is like, I did not think that was true.
You guys both have this this foundation for storytelling. What does Minecraft bring to the table? How does Minecraft, like building this world and this lore in Minecraft, how does it differ, or is it similar to creating stories in other mediums?
You know, you've done a lot of building because we changed servers and now we're in your world.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of building of temples and villages that were part of the history of the place.
Yeah. I'm not the best builder, but I often help out Yonk or other people. So on the server, we have something called quests, or like it's in the Adventurers Guild, and it's sort of like a little mini D&D style type thing where you create a story or a quest, and then people go out to solve a problem, solve a mystery, help somebody, kill something. So that kind of inspired me to try and build up my own character story and the history of this world, because when we changed servers, I was still fairly new to Blueberry. I wasn't really very talkative. I was very shy. I didn't really know anybody except for maybe Jet and Yonk, and even then I barely talked to them. And so when we changed, I'm like, this is a really good opportunity to try and put myself out there more, try and make some friends, and just sort of see where it goes. So I eventually got up the nerve to contact Yonk. I'm like, hey, can anybody submit a quest? He's like, yeah, sure, go for it. And so I started building just little things like a burnt down library or like a burnt down village or whatever. And then the more I talked to Yonk, the more we started brainstorming and that world building. And we were trying to see, so like, okay, this is a destroyed civilization. What is its history? What were the cultures? Who were the people? I feel like Minecraft in this medium offers a lot of freedom to just build whatever you want. There's no limitation for what is in the game. And since it's an open world and there's no set story mode on it, it allows a lot more creative freedom. Because if I was in D&D, I would be more subject to the rules of the DM, of the magic system, of whatever is in the current version. If I was writing my own story, I would have to be careful not to copy other people's worlds or take too much inspiration from one thing. But with Minecraft, I don't think there's such thing as a truly original story, but allows for a much more creative copycat in a way. We take inspirations from each other, and I feel like as long as it's not plagiarism, then it sort of helps sharpens each other. So brainstorming with Yonk about the different gods and the temples, helping to actually create and build this, it's very satisfying. And it's sort of like whenever you start building these civilizations or buildings, or I feel like it further connects you to stories, and it helps you create more. Like, okay, I'm building a village. Who lived here? What books or treasures are there? Why is it burnt down? Why are there bones over there? Okay, who lived in this temple? Why is it abandoned? Was there some kind of event? Are they still around? Is anybody alive? Sort of stuff like that. It asks you questions, and you have to come up with the answers. And so so following that, it challenges everybody else to ask those questions and try to figure out the answers, or even come up with their own, which is always very satisfying.
It's giving me flashbacks to playing Minecraft adventure mode, like maps. When people would just build maps and build up this story around it, and you could just enter it as a single player, but you still had that freedom to create your own story within. That's really cool.
I want to talk about it from a D&D perspective, like everything in my life. Sorry, that's a lie. I have once played D&D in real life, and I've never played with maps or with like game pieces, which are so important. I mean, Dimension 20, one of its main calling features is it's really meticulously built out maps, which allow you as a character to interact with the scene, the setting in a meticulous way, because there is something everywhere. I feel like Minecraft specifically lets me build my sets. Here is my palace. Here is the setting of my story. In this palace, there is intrigue. There is it's also something that for me building is, I mean, it's a chance to be creative. That's really what is amazing about Minecraft. Everything is a chance to be creative, and it's a chance to be creative in a different direction than just writing. It's a chance to be creative visually. And when I role play right now, what I'm doing in order to give myself kind of the time to build my gorgeous set pieces, the building is part of it.
Chose to go full Hermitcraft mode on this one.
I started disaster season and wanted something I could work on throughout all of it, just a little bit at a time. So I'm making a mega base, yes. I have a bunch of different ideas for different parts of it. One of the things that I am good at personally is talking about my ideas to people and getting them excited to build with me. I like building with people. It is an incredible experience. It is transcendent to all work together to bring something to life. And that is, in the storyline, my most evil action. Which is that in IRL, I will be like, yo, I'm trying to build this. It's going to be so cool. Like, come build with me. And storyline, I'm doing the same thing, except it's evil.
Bringing everyone together and... only to have this evil plot line.
Because the idea is building together, being creative together is an almost holy experience. It's transcendent, it's beautiful, it's like being a part of a chorus. What happens when that is wrong and bad and not something that is it's still such a draw, because we all want to be part of something bigger, right? And what happens when that's bad? I feel like that's simplifying a lot. But like, what if we pervert that feeling, that desire, into being something that is dangerous for you? There's this scene let me just preface this by saying that I feel like writing and building and doing art is a chance for me to bring together everything that I've ever read in a new way.
Mhm.
So I read Murder Bot by Martha Wells, and in the novel that she wrote, not just the short stories, one of the novellas, in the novel she wrote, what an alien remnant does is compulsive building. And that idea was fascinating to me.
Mhm.
That idea of like, this is not something you can control. You have to do it. It's an urge deep within you to build that you do, and you don't have a choice. And so that's what I feel like the evil part of that joy of working together would be. It's that jittery feeling of not being able to stop, which is what I'm trying to evoke with my evil person, with my evil character, the Snow Queen. I've read so many fairy tales as a child.
Mhm.
And my parents read to me, and they read Russian stories to me, which are incredibly depressing. And they read other stories to me. They read The Hobbit in Russian, which was
Wow.
really fun. The Snow Palace is my attempt to bring together a bunch of my childhood. It's an homage to my childhood, to having those Russian influences and just being steeped in fables and stories and singing and, working together and a bunch of different artistic pursuits, because I want to make something that other people can play in.
I feel like it's really hard to play evil characters, like to choose to do so as the main character, because when you roleplay someone, it's obviously always the main character of your POV. So you have to become that bad person, and there is no hero to come and like teach you how bad you are and everything. I feel like society has taught you the good ways of life, which is very important. Know what you can and what you can't do. Some people still cross those boundaries and they need to go to jail. And obviously, as a person, you don't want to be a bad person, which makes sense. It's just how it's normal. It's very human to not want to be the bad person. And playing the evil character is a challenge because it goes against everything that you want to stand for as a person. And it's taking the exercise of being like, hey, that person is not you, they don't represent you, and you don't have to play them as if you were representing yourself. You can just let go and just be someone completely different and indulge in this exercise of being someone else. And it's like entirely new, completely different from everything you've ever experienced, because in real life nobody wants to say that. I mean, that would be weird, but maybe people say, oh yes, please be evil with me, but I'm pretty sure they don't actually mean it, or if they do, that's pretty concerning. So that's a very, very interesting exercise, but at the same time it's challenging in that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you choose to play an evil character, you gotta be ready to take L's. That's the one thing that I think is incredibly difficult for most people, is that if they're playing a character, that is, who they're embodying, and it's so difficult to lose. It's so difficult, and it's so difficult to lose in a way that's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to stand up.
Passionate.
It's like your soapbox.
Yeah, but right, like if you're playing an evil guy, something that people want is to put you in your place, and you have to be fine with taking L's and occasionally getting beat up and being wrong. I think that playing an evil character is like science fiction, in that what science fiction does is exaggerates current circumstances to the point of absurdity to examine its faults. I think playing an evil character is the chance to pick a character trait and take it to an absurd point. I've been really interested in playing greedy characters because I think there's a fine line between desires and greed that can be difficult to determine. That being said, I also like playing characters at which the greed is to the point of absurdity. It's non-sustainable. Eventually everything will be gone and you can't live like that. It's so easy to be like, yeah, being greedy is terrible, don't do it. And it's a lot more difficult to be like, how do we figure out when it is greed and when it is self-interest, or when it's protecting yourself, or when it is protecting your friends or your people, or like at what point it goes from staking a claim on things that are important to you and protecting them to, well, this is bad. You know, like there's a line in there, and that's very interesting for me to play with. I think greed specifically, especially in our culture right now, is something that is so it's so maligned and it's so necessary.
Yeah.
And it's also so painful, and it's like wanting things doesn't make you a bad person. At what point does it make you a bad person? Like, at what point between these are my friends, I want to make sure they're okay, and these are my friends, no one else should talk to them? There's a gray area in there that you have to define a line. You know, roleplay is such a nice way to softball that question, or to explore that gray area.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's roleplay is a good way to explore those different boundaries.
Exactly. I think that too. I think like that is greed and everything, and what's good and what's bad. It's your like the thing that you like to explore when you RP. I'm not as focused on good and bad and morality, but I do feel like RP gives you the chance to experiment a life that you would not be able to experiment with. Maybe you don't want to be that kind of person, or maybe that's just a concept that's just really alien to you, and you want to just try and see what's going on with that, but you don't want to do it in real life. Like, for example, I play a character that's coming from another planet, and he
has no
is
spine.
very he has no spine.
He has no spine.
Because he has no ego, so he's not bothered by being trampled on, and that doesn't affect him, but he also let everyone walk over him. But there's one thing that he sees is everything is just numbers and technical profit or losses, and so he thinks in profits and losses and doing the most efficient move to gain the most good things for him and everything. And that's a very interesting, like, only pragmatic type of view of the world that I wanted to explore. But that's not something that you can do in real life. You cannot just say to your friends one day, oh, I want to do a social experiment. What if I just treat you like an object one day? Like, it's not a thing
you
that
can,
you
but
do.
then you end up on Reddit in a weird "Am I the asshole?" post.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe.
Um,
And it can be anything else. Like maybe you have a very pragmatic life and you suddenly want to try being extremely extravagant and emotional and sensitive for everything and see what it would do to you. And it's like you said, it's a terrain to experiment and to try things and just test the lives that you do not have and probably will never have.
Yeah, and I do have something to add, sort of like onto what Jet was saying earlier about like the roles of bad guy, good guy, stuff like that. Whenever you RP, like y'all have all been saying, you're in a very vulnerable position, and so whenever somebody offers criticism, you have to learn how to take it with grace and take it as like them trying to help, unless they're like just being a total jerk about it. I feel like that's also another reason why people are hesitant to play the villain role, because they don't want to be critiqued every single time for their character, even though that's the point of the character in a way.
Can you imagine somebody coming up to you and being like, "You're not playing evil enough," even though that is fully something that I've done? I've reached out to somebody and been like, "Yo, right now would be a good time to like threaten them."
This
Like, please.
This kind of reminds me of Aret's role in the Dream SMP, how a villain, a betrayal was kind of forced upon their character. And
Well, and it's so exciting to be one, right? But then there's consequences. And that sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think he was prepared fully to deal with the consequences
Well,
afterwards.
it's because, first of all, I will constantly defend Aret. I think that it is.
But we're gonna fight.
I think, first of all, I think I'm, examining it in a meta way. But I think, oh my god, it was such a gut punch. It was such a good emotional moment.
It was.
And of course, everybody felt that. Like, that's the point. When you play something, is you're trying to make other people feel things. Like, the win point of improv, of D&D, of role-playing with people is to make them love your character or love your story to the point that they're scared with you, they're sad with you, they're happy with you, and they cry. There were so many moments like that in Dream SMP.
Yeah.
I think that they were right to bomb L'Manberg. I think, on the whole, that entire situation was a crucible that allowed for so much character growth, for so much understanding of what your goals are. And as many people as could jumped on that moment of a life and death situation, of losing more than your life, of losing your home. And what do you do to prepare for that? You've got 24 hours. I mean, it was such a great moment, and I watched every single one of those streams, and then I wrote down all the really cool and interesting points, and then I sent it to Blueberry, and then she was like, half of these are terrible, I'm not including them. Or rather, half of them are not going to fit in a literally 2-hour edited together, it was 2 parts. It was huge.
Yep.
The event was huge.
Yes.
And so interesting and incredible, and it caused so much emotion in everyone who watched it. It was so divisive. Why would they do this? Who would make this decision? Well, here's who would make this decision, and here's these people who made these decisions. Like, sorry, it's really exciting.
No, carry on. Doomsday is one of my favorite arcs. It's one of my favorite streams.
It's genuinely, it's so good.
It's so good. Because you're right, the point where everyone is coming together and Doomsday is kind of like a bottleneck. Everyone's storylines come together for this one event, and then afterwards, everyone came out of it with something. Every single character had a realization or came to a conclusion in their storylines and in their own character arcs that helped develop their character for the future. And it's just this most important point in the storyline.
Right, and I feel like as a writer and as a organizer and as a DM and as somebody running a server, making situations like those is everything. Like, that is what it's about. It's about getting everyone together. It's about making a moment where everyone undergoes character change.
I think what made it so good for me, Doomsday, was that it did not feel like it was planned. It was like, it made sense that everybody went through it. If they just said, oh, we need to have a big end of the server events that's gonna impact everybody, so we're just gonna throw in an event because why not, it would have been so much less interesting, and it just felt so natural for it to happen because you have all of the details before. Like, obviously Techno would want to destroy the nation, obviously Dream would feed that because he hates them too, because he wants the server, because he was designed in the beginning of the server to protect said server. Everything just makes sense. Every character's part, the way they react to it, it doesn't feel like it was made to be impactful, but just is impactful. And we had some very raw improvisation dialogue.
I think that basically what Rion likes about RP is that everyone, as long as everyone has a good explanation, as long as people have good character development to get to that point, that's wonderful. And I agree. I don't think that you can do anything really deeply dramatic until you've done 100 unimportant things to
Yeah.
let people know who your character is.
We had people in our server try to build up these big important things and go on these long quests and do everything, but in the end there was no big payoff because they didn't lay the correct groundwork and they were not clear about their character's intentions. So at the end of it we were just all like,
why'd you do that?
Well,
yeah, we were just like, some of us were like, we already knew that. Others were just like, okay, so like, what was the point of all this?
That was 4 hours.
Yeah, like
You just look at them and you're like, well, they're dead now.
it's it's good to try, and everybody has stumbling steps, and
You have to fail 1,000 times before you do good. But also, that is also true of characters. Here's the thing about role-playing, is that a lot of people really love drama. And I am one of them. But you cannot start with that because nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Is first you need to get attached to things. You need to have pets. You need to build your starter house. You need to save your first pickaxe. You need to get 1,000 different things that connect you to this world, to this person, to this frog. You know? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not interpersonal if we don't know who those people are.
Or even if you don't fully know who they are, you have to have something to hook you to want to know who they are. And
Yeah, that's
as
why-
the history goes on.
Why when we work with people, we're like, listen, you should go talk to this person. You should go ask this person, like this other character. Like, you have to talk to them. You have to involve them. You have to be part of the community of a bunch of different people. I think why Empires works, why Hermitcraft, even if it's not an RP server, Rendog is still constantly telling this beautiful story. Just every season, just hits after hits. But it's because they hang out, they do starter bases, they work together, they throw each other into holes 700 times. I'm really a huge fan of season 8 of Hermitcraft because it's their one like short form, full lore
Bodum hole.
The Bodum, yes. Thank you. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Moonbig. What a simple idea. The moon is going to crash into the world, and everybody built something for it.
Yeah.
Everybody reacted differently. People started cults. People dragged other people into cults. Mumbo. They built escape pods. Tango went to the moon and set off a bunch of TNT.
Yeah.
To blow the moon back on. Like, everybody made a different choice for themselves and worked together, and people were like constantly interacting with each other. We know these people. They've established a persona or a character, or they have history.
Same for the Third Life series as well. We mostly know who the people are, and if we don't, then we're introduced to them through the people who we do know. And there's extravagant, crazy plot lines that just happen because of just total improv and just things just happening. And it's glorious chaos.
You have to go yes and to the bit, and people won't go yes and to the bit.
Yeah.
Unless they know you, right? Like, that's why it's so wonderful to watch friends play together. That's why I feel like RPing with Emuna or Rion or Yonk, like people who I've known for 2 years at this point, it feels like dancing because I know that, for example, they will catch me or I will catch them. Or if I, give Emuna, if I give Emuna space to step forward and surround her with spikes, she will step forward. She will take that bait.
For the content.
For the content.
So I want to lead into this controversial element of the DreamSMP where the lore kind of tapered off, and you were talking about Hermitcraft Season 8 and you were talking about Third Life, and the DreamSMP has, it almost feels like a different story to those.
Oh yeah, it is.
But it also needs some of the elements that Third Life had and that Hermitcraft Season 8 had in order to keep it alive, because the creators have said that they have felt that some of their stories weren't being received by the fans, or that they couldn't make lore on the SMP anymore just due to the fact that the history of the lore was something that was so sacred to the fans that they felt like they couldn't add anything to it or take anything from it. So yeah, how do you guys think that impacts roleplay or impacted the DreamSMP server?
Well, so Hermitcraft and Third Life are different from DreamSMP because every season of Hermitcraft, every season of Third Life, there's always a new server, and there's people that are added or something like that. There's usually a new update or something like that.
And there's a definitive end.
Yeah, there's you always know there's going to be an end. You're not always quite sure when, but you always know it will come to an end. With DreamSMP, it's easy because like on our server, on Blueberry SMP, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of lore, there's a lot of things that we hold dear. I think with DreamSMP, it's sort of like, I think people probably just kind of got burnt out and constantly trying to adapt history or storylines that have been done can get exhausting, and it can kind of the stress of everything, because DreamSMP is such a big service, has so many well-known people and big storylines. I feel like audience expectations can lead to stress, anxiety, and creative fatigue. Those can be real killers for motivation. I don't know, I feel like also communication is a big important step because I don't know where I heard this, but I feel like there wasn't enough communication, or people were just too busy. So if you don't communicate, or at least have like a basic sense of like what people are gonna like do or who they are, then it's difficult to form bonds or friendships, and it's difficult to translate that into characters and storylines, because like Rion, Jet, and I and some other people, we don't know everybody, but we try to make an effort to include people into the story, or at least hear out their side of things for the most part. And we try to help them take the first steps to get involved, and then sort of like let them go and keep an eye on them until they're more sure of themselves. With DreamSMP, I feel like sometimes you're just kind of thrown into it and expected to already have something ready to go, but it can be really daunting if you're new compared to somebody, say, like Tommy or Fundy or Wilbur. Oh, who was it? Was it it's the guy who did like the radio podcast all lore.
Michael McChill.
Yeah, Michael. I think he tried, I remember watching a stream of his, and he tried to do lore, like the typical monologue, like how Rambo would do or something like that. Because, it was just him on the server, basically. And he was so nervous, bless him, because, like, same. I get so nervous every time I participate in a live lore stream. He found his groove with, like, the podcast stuff, and I think that was really interesting. Yeah, I think with the DreamSMP, at least from my perspective, I think it almost kind of, in a way, became, this may sound bad, but, like, almost predictable in a way. Which that's not per se a bad thing, but
predictable. What?
I think just the same storylines being history repeating itself over and over and over again.
It came to a point where it was more like a single player world for everyone who is trying to make lore.
Yeah.
And you guys mentioned before that collaboration and letting people in on your lore, but also having that vulnerability to give your character away to another person's storyline. I don't know how much that translated into the DreamSMP.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. When introducing new players into a storyline, and it's always great to get new players, but you really need to hold their hand for a while and talk with them and reach out to them, and in lore do those first step things. Like, somebody has to be the person who asks, so what's your deal? Here's my deal, here's what's happening with me, what's going on with you? And that's difficult. Is it worth doing? Absolutely. I feel like a lot of times there is this idea that we are role-playing to have fun, and if we have to do even a little bit of work, then what's the point? And I think that it is worth putting in work for something you enjoy in order to let other people also be able to play with it, to make sure that everything has that internal understanding, to make sure that everything at least has an internal logic, and to make sure that the people who join know, like, we have a library, we keep copies of every single book anyone has written. A lot of our stuff is written. It's important to me to have a record of every single thing I've said so that I can go back and basically see who I've promised what to, how I've reacted to things before, and to maintain that internal logical consistency. I'm telling a story. I want to know what I've said, and I want to know where I'm going. It's like the people who take notes in D&D, which is also what I am now.
Yeah.
Because it's important, because you have the chance to look over your stuff and know what's going on. A lot of times, if you're somebody who does like video content creating, doing something that is not video content is difficult because then your followers can't see what you've done. But also, going back over video content is time consuming because it is only video. I read faster than I listen or watch, right? I'm an incredibly fast reader. I am constantly reading, which I think is what makes me cool at writing, is is the fact that I read so much and so often, and I have a lot of different stories I can pull from.
Yeah.
That's a separate point. Here is where me and Rion differ, and I've changed my way of RPing with her in order to facilitate kind of us both enjoying what we're doing, because I really like talking to people out of character while I'm talking with them in character. I feel like it's extremely key to me to make sure we're all on the same page, to make sure that, like, when I play with Emuna, I am in her DMs asking her, can I do this? What if I say this? Wait, that would sound stupid. Anyways, like, me and Emuna chat and also do very dramatic waltzes. And that's something that is not, well, for me, it's not possible to do in person, because I can't chat with somebody and talk to them. I just can't. I think people who can read chat and also be talking are very strong, and this is why I'm not a streamer. I just guest places because it means that I never have to read chat. That's it.
In terms of DreamSMP, I think I talked about it a little bit in a video we had with the Pandora. I think I couldn't really express what I meant, so I do want to have your opinion, both Jet and Emuna. I think in the beginning what made the DreamSMP very popular and very enjoyable was how casual it could be, and how that casual behavior became so important later on when things started to happen, when wars started to break out, when sides started to be formed and things like that. Because they had those times where they were playing and just being very casual, mining for 2 hours and just joking with one another, forming those bonds. And you've said it, Jet, that it's like really important to have those moments, and I fully agree. That's everything, I think, in that enjoyment. And then the slight planning that Wilbur did to make everybody communicate about what they were doing and how they were gonna waltz with each other again was the perfect mix. And I think that got lost, not because Wilbur stepped out, but because there was a huge standard of the DreamSMP, because people were so used to be so moved and touched by whatever was happening and everything, that suddenly people who were in the DreamSMP felt like they couldn't
Casual things,
do the casual things anymore. And
Yeah.
I think that's because, like, suddenly it was not just playing on Minecraft anymore, it was a story, and a story is a noble thing. Writing a story it's an art, and it should be super planned and written beforehand and thought about and very artistic and everything. And I think that's just the common image that people have. I'm like, oh wow, I'm writing a story. Suddenly it's not just Minecraft roleplay anymore. It's just like Quackity was like, oh, I need something cinematic. Other people were like, wow, Quackity is doing something amazing and people are loving it. So I must also like take narration as the noble thing that it is and plan things out. I can't just casually mine.
It was almost like a TV show.
It was, I would say that, I don't want to say the death of the DreamSMP, but I feel like, okay, so I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to define the difference between just casually hanging out and lore moments. I think that once that gets to the point, where they're completely separate, where they can't intersect, it's so difficult to switch from one to the other. And because of that, you want to just give it your best storytelling ability. You're like, this is where I come for storytelling, not necessarily. And I know people still streamed, and a lot of it was just non-lore, but I know a lot of, like, Tommy basically stopped showing up on the DreamSMP if he wasn't doing a lore stream.
I think the problem happens much earlier than when they have to separate actual lore than casual lore, which is already a weird
Just a
differentiation.
weird feeling.
It's
But
like-
even earlier than this, the problem happens when, in the brain of the narrators and the streamers at the time, you have standards now. I think
Yeah, this
that's
story
when-
has to be this good. I got her.
Nope.
Wait! No, this is not gonna work. I'm still in this boat.
Dream, if you're watching, try that trick.
I think he would do it the other way around.
I-
Like ejecting you from your boat.
yeah. But yeah, I think it is important to be able to have casual moments as a character. It cannot all be big things.
You need room to breathe and like take time to appreciate that, your character's still alive and we did the thing and now we can,
Give your
celebrate.
character downtime. Give your character D&D downtime where you get to, let me put the lily pad down there. But you need to give your character time to like learn new skills or do other things or talk to people or visit family. Things that make your character feel real. Yeah.
Some were doing that. I remember a Phil stream that was in the most recent ones, where he would just do some heavy lore with Tommy and then switch on to more casual things.
Yeah.
But it would still feel a bit odd because I feel like even streamers who don't care as much as other ones, they do feel the pressure of doing some quality content when they're doing that superior lore, which is actually not, and it kind of sucks. It became like that.
Yeah.
Valuing some of your work more than other of your work is something that it's a trap that we all fall into. And it's very human. And people need to be silly, and being silly is not bad. Writing lighthearted things, writing crack, writing just extremely silly circumstances, or being in extremely silly circumstances for your character in character is good.
I think it's necessary. And I think that my point was that narration is seen as something too noble for those.
Yeah, we've settled into a routine where we goof off, but our characters don't. And I feel like that separation wasn't great.
Yeah.
It's just hard to carry it on. I think one of the things about the Dream SMP was like the lack of end date, the idea that you would have to keep writing for this for years until it's done is something that is overwhelming to think about, hard to write for, and makes you feel like you have to constantly one-up yourself with events that happen.
Well, life doesn't end, and it still like can go on all the time. You don't have to have this big one moment where everything is destroyed and then it's the end of the story. I do feel like a good end is a real lifelike ending, where like maybe you end in your bed after spending years and years of good time together and not having any conflict. So I was pretty happy with it portraying not so much of a movie or book style ending and continuing on as just life does in real life, and none of those stories are told of like what happens after the big battle and everybody is back in their home. Like
that's for fan fiction, but it should be an actual fiction.
Well, that's annoying because the fan fiction just goes the same round thing. It's just like the voyage of the hero again, and it's just like, okay, but then what? And I really enjoyed that. I think it's really the standards. It would have been nice to have it continue even after the big events and just continue on, and doesn't feel like it needs to particularly end or start even. Like, you don't need a beginning.
In media res.
I mean, you don't know when the DreamSMP started. It's hard to define because Tommy and Philza always talk of a before the DreamSMP that's counted in the lore. And same for Dream and George. The way they behave is just like they arrived here, but they had a past before. And you never really know where it started, what's important in the lore, what's going to be taken as part of the lore that you didn't see.
Thank you for bringing up Utah.
I don't understand any of it.
Carry on, Ryan.
So I feel like, yeah, it could just have no beginning and no end, and just a continuous like events going on because just logic brings them here. I think it's really the desire to write something. I think it's really more the part of wanting up each other or yourself all the time that really brings down people and feel like they can't really do what they wish to do anymore.
Not to talk about Hermitcraft again, but
Mhm.
like
We're gonna talk about Hermitcraft
we're
again.
gonna talk about Mumbo, who took a break.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we all love and adore him. I'm
Mhm.
speaking generally, but if you don't, I'll fight you. But sometimes it's really important to recognize that's where you're at, right? That's what he said before he left,
Mhm.
was that every time he started a video, he felt like it had to be better than the last one. And that's just not sustainable. And it's really difficult to acknowledge. I admire the work ethic of all of these kids who are so much more famous than I will ever be. I think sometimes it's better to take breaks and just reconsider where you're going with your character, what you want to do. And I think a lot of them have now.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has been like, we're not doing DSMP, we're gonna do things that we like to do. And
Mhm.
that caused a little bit of an uproar in fans who like that story.
There's a big difference between the DreamSMP and Hermitcraft, and since we've been comparing them, I want to bring up this comparison. The fans of the DreamSMP they were so involved just because it was streamed on Twitch, so everything was happening live and right in front of them, and they could comment on it and have the creator react to their comments in the moment. With a YouTube video, you don't get that same feeling because you are watching an episode, not of a TV show, but it's very similar, and you have the very similar reaction to as a TV show. So that's another big thing about the DreamSMP that makes it different.
Yeah, I think the expectation that you'll say something and it will be seen by the content creator is such a novel thing.
Yeah.
And it's something that people who are on Twitch are very used to. But there's at least a separation on YouTube videos where they probably won't see your comment until there's like 100 comments on it, or unless you're a small creator. And again, small creators are different because engaging with small creators is more like a direct conversation, I feel like, generally.
No, I think that
20.
the problem is not so much the type of creator or how big they are. I think what matters more in terms of parasocial is how much the relationship is not equal. If you do admire someone too much, even if it's a really small content creator, you might not be able to just, put a stop when you feel like your boundaries are crossed. You're like, oh yeah, but they're super popular and I really want them to like me, so I'm just gonna agree, Or even if they're less popular, you're like, oh yeah, but they're super cool, so it's not like it's anyone else, You don't have the same boundaries, and I think that gets dangerous.
We gotta teach the kids how to set boundaries.
Yeah.
This is so important. There's gotta be a separation, though, between an online persona and who you are in real life, because you gotta have a way to relax from being online.
We have like a lot of in-game RP. We also have quite a bit of like written in text RP. we differentiate ourselves between C Amuna or C Rion. I talked to Ryan in VC. I always call them Rion because I can never get their name right, except for today apparently. But that's how I differentiate them from their character. And we always try to put C in between, or like make sure there's a differentiation.
Especially playing a villain. I want you to know, I am not evil in real life. I am not constantly thinking of, manipulating people.
No one is.
And sometimes it's a little bit difficult for people who are like, oh, she's really good at playing an evil character. Her villain is good. To separate that from like, I swear to God, I am a normal person. When I talk about eating salami in my bed, I'm not doing it in an evil way.
I'd like to end the interview.
Good, because I need water.
Do you guys have anything else that you wanted to bring up, or any final comments or anything about
I
the
think
topics?
It's so important to let go of cringe and roleplay. Let go of cringe. Roleplay. It's fun.
I also want to say, adding to that, when people are like, oh, don't cry or be emotional or like have feelings too much because it's just Minecraft roleplay. Like, boy, I'm sure you're the first to cry watching Lord of the Rings. Stop.
I don't cry. I watch Legolas flip onto his horse, like, and then I replay that for an hour.
Oh, but what I mean is just, yeah, sure, it's Minecraft roleplay, but it's still a story, and you're allowed to have feelings for it in a story way. And people cry watching TV that is fully not true and fictional all the time. And I feel like there is a huge stigma on the fact that it's Minecraft and the fact that it's roleplay. Like, no, you can definitely have emotions. Tons of things are fake and making people emotive, and it's totally fine and even like very good and healthy. You have empathy, just be proud of it.
Also, as far as like roleplay and stuff goes, be nerdy about it. It's okay to like share your ideas and brainstorm. You don't have to do it all on your own. That's what I and Jet and Rion and the Yonk are for. We're here to help and encourage you into being like, you know, we see the potential in you and we want you to achieve that. Don't be afraid to, yeah, it's a little hint there for anybody watching on the server. I don't know,
It's important to find adults who will encourage you.
Yes.
And it's also important to not trust the adults. But also, sometimes there are adults who want to help you out. We're nerds. We love stories. I've never had a good teacher experience, but I've never had a teacher like me or Emina who are running Minecraft servers 20-year-old and slightly below.
Yep.
You know, it's good to trust people who know more than you. It's good to be wary of people who know more than you. There's always a balance to things. And sometimes it's okay to take chances. Like, rarely. But sometimes it's okay to take chances and listen to somebody else.
They ask weird things, report to the mod immediately.
I think if you are RPing in a multiplayer story, communication is key. Make sure to be respectful of everybody's story, but also don't be afraid to challenge someone a little bit too. But just make sure it's in a respectful manner, because that's how we've all grown and learned, and we developed our characters, because we're constantly in communication. We're constantly, wanting to help each other improve or give new ideas or something like that.
Yep, and if you're knee-deep into making or enjoying any type of RP, you're not weird or cringe, you're awesome, and I love you very much.
Aww.
Ditto. But it's so worth it.
Yep, enjoy it and watch it and try RP for yourself, because it's really fun and you can get really into it, and you can create a great story from it and create great friends from it too.
At least it'll be an experience. You gotta have some experience that you can talk about when you meet new people.
To finish off, can we all boat back to the dock? Whoa, it's right behind me.
It can go far.
Okay.
I think that...
I
And
have another lily pad. Wait, no, my boat.
Put it back.
so Lacasse style, I have chests at the top of the staircase for everyone.
Oh, are we going to put
To
all our
drop-
stuff? Because
drop all of your
I
stuff
know
in.
for a fact that we were all catching each other's stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
I think I
happen.
lost so many fish to you, Jet. So, and like half
I
of-
actually got another bow for you, by the way. Or not bow, another fishing rod. It's got Luck of the Sea too, and mending on it.
Fishing
I
in
wanna see what
Minecraft is so underrated, and more people should fish.
I
Yes.
don't have enough
Why
space
didn't
to
you
put
fix
everything.
these? Hey, that's because you were stealing my fish.
That's not true.
Yeah, I still have stuff.
Oh my
in
goodness.
inventory.
Taking my stuff.
Amuna got
Taking your stuff.
Amuna got everything.
I genuinely was watching him
Take one of
just
those bundles.
suck up all my items. Like a little vacuum cleaner.
No.
Alright, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. And see you in the next one. Bye!
She's looking somewhere.
I'm looking. I'm in F5. I'm like a real Minecraft YouTuber.
Oh
Woo!
my god, you're bad boy haloing.
I was bad boy haloing.